On the eve of a tense meeting between Trump and Xi Jinping in South Korea during the APEC summit, China decided not to wait for the outcome of the talks, but to strengthen its own position. While Washington arrived with new tariff threats, Beijing quietly launched fresh export control regulations targeting the world's most critical materials, rare earth metals. It was an unambiguous message: control the supply chain, and you control the game. After all, every electric vehicle, smartphone, and missile guidance system relies on these elements, which China almost entirely dominates. And while the United States was trying to isolate Beijing, China was deepening regional ties, signing an updated trade agreement with ASEAN capable of reshaping Asia's economic map. This move was not just defensive, it was strategic, blending pressure with partnership. While global markets were watching the summit, China was already shaping the next chapter of world trade, one where influence moves quietly but steadily eastward. Rare earth metals are the invisible foundation of modern technology. Through decades of investment and control, China now dominates this hidden sphere, mining about 70% of the world's rare earths and processing roughly 90% of the global supply. This dominance is no accident. While other nations viewed rare earths merely as raw materials, China built an entire ecosystem, from extraction and refining to magnet production and recycling. Today, Chinese companies supply the permanent magnets that power electric vehicle motors, drive wind turbines, and guide precision weaponry. Control over this chain is pure strategic power. That is why, when Beijing expanded its export restrictions on October 9, 2025, it was not just an economic move. It was a statement. The new rules, published under Regulation Number 61, introduce a comprehensive licensing system for rare earth materials, technologies, and equipment. Every foreign buyer must now obtain approval from China's Ministry of Commerce, and licenses can be denied if the end use involves defense, advanced chips, or dual-use technologies. Even more striking was the addition of a clause similar to the one the United States used against China during the chip war. China has now extended its control beyond its borders. Any product manufactured abroad that contains Chinese rare earths or uses Chinese technology may now require Beijing's approval before export. These measures cover the entire supply chain. To close even the smallest loopholes, China added a 0.1% rule that will take effect on December 1st. This means that even if a product contains only a tiny fraction of Chinese materials, it still falls under export control, whether it is a magnet made in Germany, an electric motor in Japan, or a chip-making machine in the Netherlands. If it includes Chinese components, it automatically comes under Chinese oversight. Beijing explained the move as a matter of national security rather than retaliation, but the timing, right before the Trump-Xi meeting at APEC, spoke for itself. China reminded the world, tariffs make headlines, but control over the elements that power modern industry determines who truly runs the game. And now, that quiet, invisible power has been reaffirmed. The announcement of China's new rare earth export rules sent shockwaves through the global defense and technology sectors. In Washington, it quickly became clear that what once seemed like a logistical issue had now become a matter of national security. And yet, despite the alarming headlines, Beijing made sure its message sounded measured. On October 12th, the Ministry of Commerce clarified that this was not about bans, but about regulation aimed at ensuring exports are used for legitimate civilian purposes. A ministry spokesperson emphasized that China's actions were consistent with international practice and necessary to protect national security. China was not striking back. It was defining the boundaries of a system it already controls. It was control without confrontation, a methodical display of strength that left competitors unsettled. And while global markets tried to decipher the signal, Beijing was preparing its next move, one that would expand its influence not through restrictions but through cooperation. The world's reaction to China's new export rules was immediate. Within days, prices for rare earth magnets began to rise, and suppliers across Asia and Europe rushed to renegotiate contracts. Manufacturers feared that every shipment could face delays due to the launch of the new licensing system. Analysts from Nomura and ING estimated that even a 2-week disruption could affect industries worth more than $1.2 trillion, from electric vehicles to defense systems. Japan, which imports nearly 60% of its rare earth materials from China, urgently began signing backup agreements with Australia and Vietnam. The European Union created an emergency task force to analyze potential production disruptions in wind turbines and batteries. But alternative sources remain extremely limited. Opening new mines and processing facilities takes years, not months. Even today, most of the world's rare earth separation and refining technologies rely on Chinese expertise. In Washington, this was called economic coercion, but markets saw not pressure, rather a demonstration of structural power. China was not blocking exports, it was managing them. It decided who would receive what and when. And that quiet control made a far stronger impression than any tariffs could. Companies began stockpiling supplies, and defense contractors warned that without Chinese magnets, delivery schedules could be delayed by months. The irony was obvious. For decades, Western corporations had outsourced the dirtiest and most complex stages of production to China. Now those choices had become a strategic vulnerability. Every attempt to reduce dependence only revealed how deeply the world is woven into Chinese supply chains. And while Western factories scrambled to find substitutes, Beijing was already moving toward a broader goal, strengthening regional influence through cooperation rather than control. The next step awaited in Kuala Lumpur, where a new trade alliance was already taking shape. While Washington was ramping up tariff pressure, Beijing unveiled an entirely different approach. On October 28, 2025, at the ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur, China and 10 Southeast Asian countries signed an agreement to establish the China-ASEAN Free Trade Area 3.0, a pact covering a market of more than 2.1 billion people with a combined GDP of nearly $23 trillion. Thus, the world's largest trade zone outside North America and the European Union quietly took shape. The updated agreement goes far beyond ordinary tariff reductions. It adds 9 new chapters devoted to the digital economy, green transition, infrastructure, small and medium enterprise cooperation, product standards, and trade facilitation. Within the next decade, 92% of goods traded between China and ASEAN nations will face zero tariffs, while new digital and green partnership programs are set to launch by 2027. As Western supply chains struggle with delays, Southeast Asia is turning into a new manufacturing hub powered by Chinese capital and technology. The region is seeing a surge in cross-border projects in green energy, digital infrastructure, and logistics, financed directly through regional mechanisms rather than Western banks. An increasing share of trade settlements are conducted in Yuan, and Chinese banks are expanding clearing systems in Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia. This quiet shift gradually reduces dependence on the dollar and diminishes global demand for U.S. Treasury bonds, which for decades symbolized financial stability. Investors are already sensing the change. The share of Asian holdings in long-term U.S. debt has been declining for a second consecutive year, while investments in China-ASEAN projects continue to rise. The center of gravity of the global financial system is beginning to move eastward, toward a region building self-sufficient mechanisms where trade, currency, and investment flow along new routes shaped by Beijing. China is not engaging in direct confrontation with the West. It is constructing an alternative system where control coexists with cooperation. And as these principles take root, the rhythm of the global economy is shifting. The quiet power emanating from Asia is increasingly setting the pace of world trade and finance. So the key question now is this: can the United States adapt, or has China already changed the rules of global commerce for good? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next episode.